for you, but,
Yes.
I wrote it, so yes, yes.
a motion to approve the minutes
Have a second?
I'll second.
with the addition of me being
Yeah,
at the meeting.
yes.
All in favor?
And I abstain.
All right. Okay, director report?
Our current animals, we have 21 dogs, 17 cats, plus 10 very baby kittens. Yeah, we have a maternity ward. Our intake for the month of March, city 9, 5 cats, 4 dogs, county 11, 4 cats, 7 dogs, owner surrenders, 6 dogs, 23 cats. A lot of those were deceased owners, so I mean their kids would bring them in. So stray drop-offs, 10 dogs, 17 cats. So a total of 76, 49 cats, 27 dogs. Adoptions, 12 dogs, 2 of which were returned. Cats 19, 1 returned, total of 31. Rescues for the month of March, 20 dogs and 11 cats total. That's between Canine Express and Rover. At the beginning of March, Canine Express took 17 dogs and 11 cats. Rover, 3 dogs, I do believe, so far this month. And then the vets, for the month of March, Waltz has taken in 22 appointments for rabies shots, mainly for cats, because we had a big bundle of them come in at once. And then 1 other dog that had injuries. Madison Animal Clinic, 10 spay neuters and 5 other cases. Carroll County, 15 all spay neuter and vaccinations. That's it.
Can I take a picture of that?
Yeah, that's a lot of information. I know.
On your, the rabies vaccines for cats, what are you having to pay a piece for those?
She's having, those were $20 a piece, I do believe, on that. I'll have to look, because those were still at the old rate. Which still, I mean, it's not bad, because that includes a discounted appointment for all of them. They took in 8 or 9 at a time, so they took up a big time slot of their time. So I think we were charged for like 1 appointment, and she vaccinated all 8 cats. Does that make sense? Because they were already
So are you
spayed.
paying the appointment 20?
Yeah, we paid
So
for.
you had quite a bit more tied up than the $20 per
Right,
animal.
so it was $35 plus all 8 rabies vaccinations. So she took up 1 appointment.
Just out of curiosity, what was the dogs, the 2 returned?
1 return was, I'm trying to think here. 1 return was our Pugsley, who got adopted at our adoption event. And I guess he had put his mouth around the guy that adopted him, didn't bite down or anything, just kind of like a warning shot, so they instantly brought him back. And Freya the cat was returned for hiding. For hiding. She got mad that she wasn't a lap cat, so she got her back. The other dog returned. My brain's not working. Valerie, do you remember?
Is it March we're talking about?
Yeah.
No, because I hear you got 1 back today too.
Give
And
me
the
a
puppy
minute.
back today. I'm trying to think.
Oh, it was Deacon. It was
Yeah,
Deacon,
yeah.
our puppy. They said he was a menace to society, and he was like 8 pounds with baby teeth. Yeah, but he went home again that same week, so he got a new home. Yeah, it was
He's
our
being a
baby.
puppy.
He's being a puppy, yes. He couldn't even break the couches, like, he couldn't even break the material on the couch. He didn't have big enough teeth.
Menace.
A menace to
Menace to
society.
society.
And I actually was just there and I walked Pugsley. I was walking dogs. And
He's a great dog.
He's a great dog.
Yeah.
He was so happy. He was rolling around in the puddles and then jumping on me, so I apologize if I stink, but he was jumping up and hugging me and kissing me. Got my teeth at one point, which is so gross, but he's a great dog from the time I spent with him today. Like, I don't understand it.
I don't either. People jump the gun a lot. He could have been just playing, and he doesn't know how to play.
Yeah.
So,
Or they may never have had a pet.
Yeah.
right, and they just got nervous.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And you don't know what they were doing to him either.
right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
May have been like,
True.
hey, that's a little too
Mhm.
much, back off, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that's all I have for that. I don't really have any old news.
Was there any old business for anybody?
Old news, we talked staffing last board meeting and Lindsay gave us ideal situation of how she would like to see the shelter staffed. I don't know if you had a chance, I mean, you have this, so we can get deeper into this whenever you're ready to talk about this. But I don't know if you had the opportunity to talk about combining the part-time
I believe it'll probably happen
next year.
week.
Oh, next week?
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna talk to them next week, or it's gonna happen next week. Okay, so that was my question really, is just staffing and where you're at with staffing needs and where we were with looking into that possibility.
The video cameras and the computers.
We need a surveillance system still. Are you wanting me to come up with 3 bids for that and present them to you? Is that what you're wanting me to
At
do?
least 2 anyway,
Okay.
wouldn't you?
Yeah, because we had an instance where those 2 little pit puppies were dropped off in a tote on the front porch. Now, Brad Weiner, I know Brad Weiner, and he works over to Ivy Tech some. He does shifts over there. He said his cameras do reach over that far, but he just can't get a clear shot on the license plate
Right,
of
there
any
wouldn't be
kind.
any bio-recognition. or
Yeah.
anything, so.
So the surveillance system that you had there is just not working at all
The
anymore?
hard drive died on me.
So is it a matter of just needing a different hard drive or
Um,
the whole system replaced?
well, whatever would be cheaper. I don't-
If
it's
it
a
would matter of
pretty-
just addressing the hard drive, if that's the main issue.
Yeah, I think it just depends on when he was there, he said how old it was and what the cost would be to get an older one in there to repair it. Cause it's pretty old. And does everybody else's MetroNet, is that just bad? I honestly don't know,
We
it just
have
goes out all
Metronet.
the
We're
time.
we're just down the street from you, and ours hasn't gone out.
Ours was out this morning.
Yeah.
It was out yesterday all day.
2 days
Ours-
last week, because the city was down for 1.5 days last
Was
week.
it like this weekend it went down?
It
Cause it took
was-
911 and,
Yeah, I think it was
and then it was
last
down
week.
again last week, IDAX was
Something's
down.
going on at the courthouse, we can barely load anything.
Yes, and that same with City Hall,
Court-wise, I
It's
mean,
slow.
it's just,
we have a point of contact that, with MetroNet, that's not like in the local office, it's a bigger office that can help look into that, so I'll get you that, Lindsay.
Yeah, I mean, every time the weather is just a slightest
It's like that.
inconvenience, it just goes out. Not the phones so much, that's what confuses me, the internet goes
Cause
out
they
with
all
the
write the
phones.
same thing, that's what's
Yeah.
strange.
Yeah, I mean, the system might just be outdated, but I'll get you a contact, I can hopefully send someone that can get this addressed.
And we had our 2 adoption events, I guess that would be considered old news too. We had a lot of people come in, but no adoptions other than Pugsley that was returned 3 days later.
And I think one other thing was perimeter fencing.
Yeah, that would be really nice.
Do we need-
And
did
you
we
got
get
that
bid-
quote.
Bids on that already?
Which was $9,000.
Mhm.
So do we have it in the budget to move forward with getting it or no?
where,
We have that 2,000 left over from the kennels.
Yeah, 'cause we had 10 from the city and 10 from the county, and they were only 18, which was a good buy.
Yeah.
So actually, that quote may be up a little bit, that was,
It's a while ago.
so
No.
we'd be looking at 7 then, roughly.
Mhm.
I have to go get with the auditor and
Okay.
crunch some numbers and see what we can
See,
come
that's
up
a
with.
possibility.
I can refresh that quote too.
Mhm.
That still wouldn't have helped the puppies in the tote though, would it? Didn't they leave that in front of the door?
It would have, it Just helps if
That's
like all
better
escapes.
than dumping them out in the countryside.
Yeah, it
Because they
is.
wouldn't have made it for sure.
Yeah, I just
And
wish,
exercise too.
people understood that I would've took them anyways.
Yeah, I mean, you're
Yeah.
welcoming.
You know,
So-
yeah, so, there was no need to drop them off overnight like that.
Okay, then, new business? Anyone?
You have some information for us on the budget as to where things,
Well-
you wanna put that under new, or?
I can. Heather Huff, the county auditor, did some number crunching, and it's like we're gonna have to come up with a bunch of money to get through the year. She's saying, she's projecting the county will have to come up with, based on the percentages of what each entity has given in the past, county will have to come up with 73,000, the city 38,000, and Hanover roughly 3,500.
In addition to what's already been given.
What was the total, Ray? I'm sorry.
County 73,000 and change, the city 34,000 and change, and Hanover roughly 3,500.
Okay. Do you have, is this because the county budget, it was under asked, or do you have a reason why we're looking at this?
Well, she was just going through expenses and kind of, we were, since we're kind of looking at the shelter all new this year, she was keeping a closer eye on it.
Reckon she based it on the first 3 months, and like if it,
Well, that was only 2 months actually.
well, that's true, you said that was the end of February, so.
Right, it would be up, you'd have substantially higher payroll costs than what you had, because in the past years, because you had the women prisoners there, you didn't have as much staff. I'd say you'll find that your other supplies and veterinary costs and so forth
Just like everything else has gone
are
up,
up considerably as well.
supplies and
She
everything.
has a full-time position, and that additional, right?
Mhm.
Did they ever decide on the full-time position, what you wanted to combine to part-time?
We'll be working on that next week at our council
Okay,
meeting.
anyone still? Okay.
I mean, historically, it has not been looked at upon on a percentage basis. You know, I mean, it's strictly been that there was conversation with the county, and the county put in flat number, the city put in an additional so many dollars, and the town of Hanover put in so many dollars. And there had never been any thought process of, if it's going to be more than that, that has to come back to those entities. I'm all for everyone participating if they're willing to do so, but that's not been what the understanding has been in the past.
Well, that's just, she's floated out an idea, we gotta
Part of the
get it
reason-
from somewhere.
Part of the reason for that seems to be often overlooked, every city resident pays the county tax just the same as all the county residents do. So it's a little hard to understand why, for something that's countywide, why a particular entity would have to put in more money for it than everybody else.
Well, they do
you know?
get a portion of the county tax.
Not on the property tax side of it,
Yeah,
is what I'm
right.
talking about. That's all I'm addressing is the property tax. The income tax and the jail tax are a little bit separate from that. So it's interesting. Of course, if you spread the burden, I'm for that.
We'll get through it somehow. We have to.
Do you have numbers on Hanover intake? So you have like county and the city of Madison, but are we tracking like how many of these animals are coming from Hanover too?
It gets put in as county.
Oh,
When
gets
it
put in as
comes
county.
in, yeah, I'll have to talk to Paul and Gannon about that,
Okay.
but, yeah,
Jenny used to track that.
did she?
Yeah.
Okay,
She's
That
just
might-
looking at that address.
Yeah,
okay.
it might help because if we are gonna go before the city and the county and the town of Hanover in the future to say, hey, we need more funding,
Yeah.
it's gonna be helpful to say, Hanover, this is how many animals we're taking from your area, city, this is how many we're taking.
It
And
would
the
be-
county's everyone, but
Right, it would be easy to figure it out, because if I print out the spreadsheet of the whole intake, it gives me every address they come from. Mhm.
Do you have reports that are available from your?
I can, yeah.
That you can print out on a monthly basis?
Mhm.
No, I'm not talking about, we don't want pages and pages, or I don't, but if there's a summary report that instead of having to read these numbers off to us, that it will show basically what's came in for the month
Yep.
and year to date,
Mhm.
that would be great if we
Yeah,
could
and I
get
tried,
those.
I tried to do that today, but our printer was offline, just like everything else. But yeah, I can do that.
Or if not, there could be a Excel spreadsheet developed,
Mhm.
which, that you could just plug your monthly numbers in and it would carry your totals forward for you.
Yeah.
Show the ins and the outs, and then we used to get a list as well as to, like you did on the rescues and so forth, and if there was euthanizations, those were listed.
Mhm.
And they were usually broke down.
Yeah.
Sometimes they were broke down, whether it was for
Yeah.
medical reasons or other reasons.
Yeah.
But at some point, we're gonna have a little bit better of a plan of how the money side of it's gonna be handled, then we're gonna get through it, you know.
Mhm.
And I will say city is gonna start talking about, budget within the next
True,
couple
but that
weeks.
doesn't kick into play until next January.
That's true, but I'm just saying the discussion and decisions get made before January,
Yeah.
so
Right.
it's important to know the numbers and know what the shelter really needs, before those decisions are made, because I believe that's in July, so it's important to
Yeah,
know.
Along with that, once we figure out a good number, budget number-wise, when I get the interlocal agreement updated, since it hadn't been changed since 2007.
I believe it was.
So that can all be done, beginning of next year, and once we get a budget in line. Any other new business?
We have an upcoming rescue transport on the 12th. They're taking, so far, they're taking the mom and 8 puppies and all the mamas and all their kittens. So that'll be a big clear out on the 12th. The whole maternity ward, basically. And Cleveland APL, which is I guess a partnering shelter to Canine Express. They opened up a new building for dog intake, so they're gonna be selecting more dogs as the time goes on, more than they already are. So I got an email on that. Their building opened this month.
Now, our animals that go out rescue, you're not having to do the spay neuter on those, correct?
Not the spay and neuter, but they do need to have heartworm
Rabies.
tests, rabies shots, and their boosters and such. I have a whole list of what rescue needs what, and we just fill it out as we go like a medical sheet, but no, not spay and neuters.
And you're not shipping those either, are you?
No, no.
Okay. We had some discussion at the last meeting, there been any more checking on expense for chips as far as
Right.
which program and registering and so forth?
I think I was gonna get with you to see which ones that you use.
Yeah, I haven't done any, looking into it, other companies either, so.
So I went ahead and got just about a month's worth to get by because we were running really low. But I would like to switch to a different company.
I think there's less expensive options out there.
Mhm.
Okay, anything from Humane Society?
No, we're continuing with the low-income spay neuter and the couple of rescues that we work with, mainly on the cat side of things as such, do spays there as well. Had a call from, Valerie had handled a call well the other day. They had a person come into the shelter with a cat that was in distress on a Saturday and needed to get it into a vet. And it was low-income veterinary care. We made some arrangements and got it in over at Owington, Kentucky for her. And I hadn't heard the results of that. Did you get any feedback afterwards, Valerie? But
I was hoping you did.
No, I talked to the vet's office, but I don't know in total what the care was. But it worked well because it was a matter Valerie handled it. She just didn't hand her phone number out. She collected information, we talked, and then she got back with the person, and it went very smooth. Appreciate that.
And I have a question about Humane Society. Are you guys doing like any sort of like public education?
No, not currently.
Okay, so I know like with your tax filing with the state, that's what you say the organization is going to do, and I'd love to kind of see
Right.
that.
The only problem, all of that's really not a conversation for here.
Well, you guys don't have your meetings open, so.
I understand
So
that.
I would just like a Humane Society update and know if you guys have any plans to do any sort of public education?
Currently, we do not have plans to do public education. If you or someone else wants to put together a proposal and would need some support, we would be more than glad to look at it and consider it.
Okay, because I just think if that's what you guys have filed with the tax, that you guys need to really make sure you're focusing on that. I do appreciate what you guys are doing to help people care for like their animals. I know you guys help a lot with cats in the community getting fixed, which is important. I know, because I know Jamie, but you've mentioned that you guys have helped.
We just added a dog
lot.
rescue as well.
Okay,
yes.
awesome.
So, here in
Yeah.
the community.
So
And we
that's,
have special donors to handle some special needs for both of those.
that's,
so.
which is great. I would just love to see, because I know, I just don't feel like the shelter's at a point where we can, once we get staffing sorted out and obviously the budget again, we're not at a point, I don't believe, to do a lot of public education, and it's sad because I see just such a lack in this community of just proper care for animals, you know, that a dog is more than just a piece of your property to put out on a chain, the proper care you should have for an animal, making sure that they're getting rabies shots, I just think,
The Community Foundation has a fund for public education, so if you want to partner, if the board wants to partner with the Humane Society or even with the Community Foundation or even with the local school system, there's funding there also from the foundation. So
okay, yeah.
I'd be happy to direct or help in any way I can with that.
Because I would love to see that. I've seen it, and so, like I said, in one of the work sessions, my husky came from a really bad situation. And when I had got him out of that situation, Indianapolis was in this weird situation of like, they were still trying to get the city to pass some laws on tether laws and those sort of things, and they didn't have the sort of resources that they needed. Since getting him, Indianapolis has worked with the city to have these tether laws and to have ordinances passed that kind of help. They're still fighting for spay and neuter laws because there's a lot more animals that you see there, but they've partnered with this organization that's called Fido, and it's mostly for dogs, but it's the Friends of Indianapolis Dogs Outside, and they have a whole warehouse where they'll provide people in the community with like cat food, dog food, whatever they need, but they also go out to these homes in Indy and they talk to people about proper care for their animals. They've helped help people install fencing so their dogs have an area to run, talk to them about why their dog's acting that way is because their dog needs to burn energy, those sort of things. So eventually I'd like to see us also having that sort of public education for our community, and I'd love to see the Humane Society step in and help with that. So if you can pass that on to your board whenever you guys meet, I would appreciate it.
Okay, I guess next up would be our discussion on euthanasia.
Are we gonna get into policy?
Adoption policy
Yes.
first.
Oh, we're gonna finish that at first, I thought we were finished.
No, I think we're in a good place with the most recent documents. Okay. I mean, did anyone have any, because I know Warren sent back, you sent back some edits and then those got added in, but other than that,
And then I sent back another set of edits after the first
Yes.
one. Yep, sent that out to everyone.
So my question would be, I come in, I adopt a dog.
Right.
It's not spayed yet. And in a couple days, they're gonna have a group of them going out and I wanna leave my dog there.
Mhm.
How many days do you think is appropriate for somebody who's adopted an animal to leave their pet?
It just depends on what day. The way we do it right now is, if it's a cat, Wednesdays, Tuesdays or Wednesdays are the day. If it's a dog, Thursdays, Carroll County is the day. So that's really just kind of you come in and you adopt a dog on a Wednesday and I squeeze it in next day at Carroll County, they can go home the next day afterwards. But if you come in on a Friday and you adopt a big dog and you wanna leave it until then, it would be left until the following Thursday. So it could be left up to 6 days. Does that make sense?
Do you wanna leave it I mean, do you
I
just wanna do
prefer
that?
not to, but if they have, if it's a liability for where they live, if they have other animals in and out of the home that's not spay and neutered, which I can't do anything about if it's already in their care. But the responsible thing for me to do would to be to keep the dog at the shelter if there's other like unspayed or neutered animals in the home.
For free?
Well, I have to feed it. Yeah, I mean, that's just what I walked into, so that's what I've been doing.
I think if we keep,
Yeah.
we should charge some fee
Yeah.
to keep them those extra days. Otherwise, take their $75 and have them bring it back. It just seems,
I mean, that would be a topic of discussion. That's just not something that I've thought twice about since starting. I just felt like most of them take them and then have them back the night before. But if they are in a position where, say, they're said to go on vacation and they need to leave there a couple extra days, they're gonna pick it up on this day, certain circumstances. Or if they, like I said, have another female dog in the house that's not spayed yet, and they're adopting a male dog. That's a liability though, we're gonna get those puppies. So, it just kind of depends on the situation.
I think we need to make a decision and that needs to be, I think it needs to be in the policy.
Another thing that really needs to be in the policy is when those dogs go home, the shelter is not responsible for any damages done to any other pets in the home or any property. Because I've got some calls on that and there's nothing we can do.
Yeah,
Once they've adopted them and paid for them, if they get in a scuffle with the dog, we're not responsible for those vet bills.
Of course not.
So, but that is something that's come up a couple times.
Wow.
So,
That menace puppy.
so it needs to be, that needs to be in the adoption policy too.
Okay.
So if we're not responsible for them once they're adopted for that, then we shouldn't be responsible for paying for their food and everything else if they stay at the shelter longer.
Right, that would be
So we
ideal.
should
Yeah.
have a minimum charge to keep them.
Right, that would be ideal. We've done something since I've started called an early adoption contract, where they would put so much down and then fully adopt the dog after it's spayed and neutered. But if they don't come back for the dog, they don't get that money back that they put down on the animal. We have done that. But most of them are pretty good about taking them home until they're spayed and neutered and having them back.
What's your thoughts to where we can make some progress on this adoption policy? You don't have a copy of it, what you do?
I don't have a copy.
Can we start through it and see what we're in agreement with and make the changes to each section as we need to go through? But as you can see,
Make copies real quick.
sure, that'd be great.
Yeah, like a bunch
And
of
then we
maybe.
need,
I need one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't realize we were gonna jump into policy discussion tonight, but I appreciate it, cause progress.
if
Yeah.
we gotta move forward.
So long as Lauren remembers, cuts us off like you did last time when we hit that clock. Oh, wait, I have a question. Okay, so this vet services, and then you have like all of these, is that all like, okay, so you have vet services, do those fall under vet services or no? Like the vet medication, ratings and
Those
spay
are all
neuters?
separate lines.
Those are separate, so we didn't budget for them.
Right.
Can we move money?
Mhm.
Okay, so we can move money.
Mhm.
So we can do like a so what would this be, just general, just like, well, I don't know what vet services would be then.
That'd be like sick animals, probably.
Okay.
You have like your standard,
Anything other than a spay neuter and a
vaccine
rabies.
and spay
Okay.
neuter and
So we've not really touched that. We've spent $282 out of that, and then spay we spent a lot more, but if we can move some of that money, that helps with those line items.
Oh, yeah, we move money all the time.
But this is up to date as of
That was end of February.
end of February.
It's changed since, trust me.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's not, I would expect like, hang on.
Especially the vet services one has changed drastically since then.
Yeah. I would have expected us to have spent a lot more though on medication, vaccinations, and those sort of things than those numbers that you're seeing there.
A lot of the stuff towards the beginning of the year was still stuff that was being caught up from,
Oh, okay. Like past bills, yeah.
yep,
Okay.
there was a lot of those at
Which
first.
kind of messed up the budget.
Yeah.
Because if this isn't spent, does it go back into the general fund? Okay.
much that goes back into the general fund,
Yeah,
in any place.
yeah, understandable.
So with that idea that you had, would that technically get into, would we be considered like a boarding facility in that case? If we were charging people to keep the animal there after it was already adopted, would that be like getting into a whole other ballgame of, that's something that I don't know. I would have to look
I
into
would
that.
not wanna board people's
No,
dogs,
Yeah.
we don't
like,
wanna,
So, I mean, we would, that would be what it would be though, we would be charging them for them to stay there, so that would be considered boarding.
Yeah, and then you have to worry about the liability factor too, because, you know, once it's adopted, it becomes that owner's pet, and then
Right.
what if, you know, the animal is at the shelter and gets attacked by another
Right.
dog, like, you know, what happens then? Because we were just saying, like, once that animal goes home to the owner, you're no longer responsible for something like that to occur, but what if it occurs while you're waiting for it to get spayed or neutered,
Right.
Yeah.
you know? And
so
then
maybe
that's,
you shouldn't, maybe you should just have them, take them home and not
Yeah,
keep them.
mhm.
that would be the easiest solution.
Yeah,
Yeah, and just collect the deposit so that we make sure that people are still continuing to do the spay and neuter.
yeah, ideally, we wanna get them out of there.
You know, I would say if somebody comes in, you know, like cats, right, they get spayed or neutered on Wednesdays, and dogs on Thursdays, so if somebody comes in Monday or Tuesday that week, like one day is not gonna be an issue, but,
Right.
you know, if it's the week prior, and they're gonna be, you know, that definitely
Thank
needs
you.
to.
Yeah, because Carroll County, they'll take all the big dogs, but they take 4 or 5 at a time. We fill that pretty quick.
You need some?
Yeah. Thank you, sir. If somebody may want to partially adopt, or start the process of adoption and not finalize it until they're sure back after they've been spayed or neutered.
Right,
I was gonna print mine out today, but why too much
like a
paperwork?
deposit down and then come back and finish it when it's done, that's a good idea
I've
too.
probably done that.
And we do, like, that is an option there, early adoption.
We started off with the adult canine page, was that the first,
Correct.
that was the first page in it? Well, let's start down through, if you want me to lead this, or if anyone else wants to, they're more
Go
than
ahead.
welcome to.
Go ahead.
All right. We've established an adoption fee of $100, unless we get into other discussions, we're gonna agree to that. You can see the next paragraph deals with the requirement on the spay, neuter, rabies vaccination. And then we have a listing of the services that are going to be available. We changed the one language we'd had, made it local registration, to where we're not necessarily putting it into a national database or whatever. That would be up to the adopter. Is everyone in agreement with that change?
Yeah.
And then we added heartworm testing as needed to the list. Is there any other changes or additions that need to be made in that part? All right, we move on. This is a question that we'd had now. We've got the juvenile canines, and those who have not yet been spayed or neutered will have an appointment made with a local veterinarian before adoption. And remember, we had a list of 2 or 3 different ones, and we just shortened it to local veterinarian. The appointment will be confirmed and logged in the spreadsheet and maintained at the shelter. This is new language that has been added, and this is where some of the questions come in. If the procedure can be scheduled within 7 days, the adopter may choose to leave the animal at the shelter until the procedure is done. Do we want to leave that at 7 or shorten it to 3, or?
Excuse me.
What's realistic, Lindsay?
Realistic is 3 to 5, just for the mere fact that we have certain days a week that we take animals. It's very hard to call that evening and get in the next day anywhere. It's just very hard to.
So would you be comfortable with changing that to a 3-day time period?
Yeah, I would be
All right, so
comfortable
we're gonna
doing that.
change the 7 to 3. And then, choose the animal shelter until the procedure is completed. The animal may then be picked up at the vet after the procedure or when returned to the shelter. We're fine with that. We stayed the same. If the adopter chooses to take the animal home before the procedure, a $75 security deposit required before leaving the shelter, and will be returned when the adopter brings records of procedure to the shelter. And then, an animal which has been adopted may remain with the shelter for a maximum of 3 days.
So that's just
I
repetitive.
think, no, I think you need to cut that out if you don't wanna be responsible for them.
That's what I'm asking.
I mean, if
yes.
you're saying we're not responsible once they're adopted,
Mhm.
then we shouldn't be responsible for them at the shelter
Yeah.
either. If they adopt them, they need to take them home.
Liability wise, that would be ideal. Yes, just some people I've run into have different circumstances. It would be ideal, yes,
To remove
Well,
that.
to
I mean-
remove that, yeah.
Can't you tell them we can start the process of adoption and you can finalize it when you can pick them up?
Yes, yes, we can do that, yeah.
That's like
But
you
if,
said.
and let them know that if somebody
Deposit.
comes in tomorrow and wants to adopt them tomorrow, they may not be here.
Okay.
I
Well,
don't
what
know,
if
but-
you'd adopt one today and you can have it, the procedure done tomorrow? I mean, it doesn't make sense that they'd have to
Take it home.
take it home and run it back that morning and.
No, we're allowing for the
Yeah,
3
this
days
is-
for that in the
Yeah.
paragraph
Yeah.
before
This
that.
is
Right.
for one
This
that's
is for an
already
animal
fixed.
that's already been
Already
spayed, neutered,
fixed, yeah.
that would be able to leave the shelter.
Oh, yeah, they would need to be picked up. I thought
mean,
we were still on
No,
the
no,
subject
no,
before.
we're strictly
Yeah.
on animals.
Yeah.
So basically,
clarify
we
the
could take
language.
out this entire last,
Mhm.
everything that's in blue could
Yeah.
just come off of there.
Yeah.
There's no need to even address that.
Right, I fully agree. When they're fully vetted and adopted, they
Except
need
for
to go with
adopted
time of
animals,
adoption.
no
Yeah.
spay or neuter.
Yeah.
So no, that's.
Yeah, so
Okay.
we don't
that's
need
not
that
good.
language.
All right. Then we get into the canine adoption procedures. We're gonna take all that language out above, so we'll be fine there. Canine adoption procedures, you can read through what's your thoughts on that. There was some discussion of the meet and greet being encouraged, so forth. Lindsay, most of that's dealing with you. Is there any other language, anything changes you wanna see in that?
It's not necessary for me to bring a cat in for a meet and greet. What I
No,
mainly,
we're on the canine ones right now, though.
yeah, well, I'm saying if they wanna adopt a canine, I think there was wording in there at some point, if there's any other animals in the household,
Mhm.
to bring them in.
Any indoor pets,
Yeah, so I don't
Yeah.
encourage cats to come in, I
So
think,
any indoor
Any
canines.
indoor,
yeah.
Canines,
any
yeah.
other indoor canines.
yeah.
Yeah. So you wouldn't need a guinea pig either?
Okay.
Any other changes on that page?
Mm-mm.
All right, then we move on to the adoption process.
Should there be, just kind of in the wording of this adoption procedure, like, instead of it saying at the very last line, the adopter can schedule a second meeting, or should it say an additional meeting? Or consider the foster to adopt, because you already talked about a first meeting, second meeting in this top paragraph. So should it say it, like, if there are concerns about finalizing the adoption, the adopter
Sure,
can
you
schedule
just
it.
change the addition.
Yeah.
In addition to that.
That's fine.
Just feel like that.
And starting the adoption process, we've got to complete the adoption form on Pet Point. And then I had a question, because I think we're opening up a door. It would be wonderful if we could get that done, but I think we're going to have a lot of problems if you require that they prove that all other animals in the home are vaccinated for rabies.
Rabies vaccination is required by law in the state of Indiana. And if you are sending another pet into a home where people are not even doing the bare minimum of requiring a rabies vaccination, that is just not gonna be a good environment for that pet. I just feel like that has to be part of the adoption process, and getting records from veterinarians is super easy, if the owners are doing what they need to do for those pets and getting rabies vaccinations.
And if the owners aren't doing what they need to do, then we don't want those animals going to those homes.
Exactly.
So I think that's really important language to keep in there.
Yes.
All right, then you would scratch
Which
out
is, which is where we say at the guidelines, you have the right to refuse adoption that's not in the best interest of the animal.
I don't know.
They will have an easy, they'll have an easy way around that. I mean, they just will not state that they have any pets at home,
Right,
once the word gets out about that, but, and you're going to slow your adoption processes up at times, because they'll come in and adopt the animal, and it may take them a day or 2 or 3 to gather up the rabies vaccination proof on the other animals and bring them back in.
All you have to do is
takes
call a
is phone
vet.
call.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Can you do that on the weekends if they adopt on Saturday or Sunday?
You may have a legal issue.
You,
Well, you have to
It
have
depends on
verified
Saturdays,
before they
yes.
take the animal.
but on
You need to state
Sundays,
that.
no.
I'm not sure where we stand on it, because it's been
Yes.
interesting. I hear this as such,
I think you can talk about animals.
but on a very regular basis, I have taken animals into a vet for various care. I've taken them in for whether it was a spay or neuter or so forth. And and it will be a new vet that I hadn't been to before with the animal. And it is rare that that vet has inquired whether the animal I'm bringing in is even vaccinated. I mean, do you have a requirement when an animal comes into yours that you require proof of its vaccination before you treat it?
I do.
And then before you treat it, you require that they show you proof that their animals at home are all vaccinated?
Well, I'm not treating the animals at home.
Well, we're not doing anything with the animals at home either.
But you're
Yes, we
bringing
are.
a new
We're
animal
bringing a
into
new
the
animal.
household.
You're sending an animal back into the household that was not vaccinated,
But
so
it's
what's
their-
the difference?
It's their owned animal. Like, I'm not responsible for,
Neither's the
Where's the
shelter.
difference between that and the shelter?
because the shelter is harboring those animals and finding them a new home.
But the one we're sending them back to is vaccinated. The animal we send out is vaccinated.
I think you're missing that if someone's not willing to provide the records or to vaccinate their dog and follow, like Joy said, the bare minimum, then that person doesn't need to have an animal.
Right.
End of day, it doesn't matter if that slows the adoption. We're not here to adopt animals out to people who aren't gonna care for the animals the right way. We're here to adopt these animals out to homes that are gonna become their forever homes, and that they're
I
going to be
agree, those are very,
receiving
very,
medical care.
I agree, those are very positive things. I just think that you have to be ready then,
Legal.
that when it comes to the matter of being willing to euthanize for overcrowding in the shelter.
Well, I
Because
think
these
you can look at the
steps
numbers.
will lower adoption
I
rates.
think you're wrong, first of all, and I think you can look at Lindsay's numbers and see that you can see that she's getting these animals out of there.
That's fine.
We aren't
We-
euthanizing.
If that's the will of the board, I understand. We'll just verify all family pets are vaccinated.
Yeah,
we
with
can-
the rabies vaccine, which, and I will say, I have 6 rescue dogs, and if they have to go to a vet because my vet's not open, I have to have those records, I have to show, otherwise they'll administer a rabies vaccine right then and there, even if I'm like, oh, my dog already had it, but I don't have the paperwork, they'll be like, well, I'm sorry, we have to administer the rabies vaccine.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it.
Most places I've boarded an animal do not request the rabies. Some of them do request the, board,
Kennel cough.
yes, the kennel cough or
I don't know
whatever.
where you're boarding, but mine all have required that.
All right, that's fine. If it works out good for us. It'd be a positive thing. So moving on, copy of valid driver's license or other ID, review all medical and paperwork, set up vet appointment for spay neuter if needed, and record on spreadsheet, microchip and register in-house, take adoption payment. Any changes, any additions to any of that area?
Can I add something to that?
Yes.
Saturdays, because I'm the one that works on Saturdays, you can't get an appointment or anything, so there's gonna have to be something different that happens on Saturdays. Because we cannot call to make that appointment if they're wanting to take a puppy home on a Saturday. I can't get an appointment for 3 months down the road or whatever, because the vets are not open on Saturdays. So we're gonna have to have a Saturday amendment or something we do differently on Saturday. And plus, sometimes I'll be honest, if I'm there Sundays and people wanna come in and look at dogs, I let people come in and look at dogs on Sundays, because, we need to keep the dogs moving. So is there, something different that we need to do on the weekends?
So that's going back not to the adoption process, but this, the appointment will be confirmed, is that what we're looking at?
No, it's on the set up vet appointment for spay
Oh,
neuter if
okay,
needed,
yeah.
and record on spreadsheet.
Which is also back here on this language as well.
Which that would tie into the $75 deposit, they could take the animals and.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, if
Yeah.
you're not able to set up the appointment, they'd still be able to do their $75 and
yeah.
take the animal on Saturday, so I think
So
we're,
this is something that's gonna start happening, or are we
Right.
supposed to have already been doing this, or
Right.
this is, we're just talking about what's in the
Yeah.
future? Okay.
On
so
Saturdays,
you'd
you
be
can
able,
take the money.
you just select the
Right,
$75.
we would take the
or-
$75
right.
Gotcha.
Or you've got your 3-day to where they could have you hold the animal and come back on Monday to finish up the appointment and so forth.
Which, I'm sorry, I have a question, because I know this is state mandated with this.
Mm-hmm.
So, if we set up these appointments for them to be spayed and neutered, do we still collect that $75 until that, the
If
person
the animal's
follows
leaving the
through?
shelter,
Then they
and
come
they're
back.
not spayed or
Okay.
neutered, we're gonna
Under
collect
take
75.
adoption payment, it should say take adoption payment and, security or
Yeah,
pay
and-
your deposit if needed.
Right, that's a good
Okay.
addition, I like that.
So to answer your question too, it's something we should be doing. Or maybe we're not currently taking that $75, but we should be because it was state mandated.
Yeah. Basically, any animal that goes out of the shelter that has not been spayed or neutered has to have that $75 deposit collected.
Yeah, I haven't been letting that go out on Saturday if it's not spayed or neutered. I tell them, you know, we do the pre-adopt where they're just paying the basic money down and then they'll come back to spend, you know, pay the rest of it when the thing is done. I don't let any animal go out if it's not spayed or neutered on the weekend.
Good, yeah.
All right. And moving into the feline adoption fee, we're at the $45 currently on that we discussed at the last meeting. The list of services there, is there anything to add or delete?
I don't really, I mean, the feline leukemia testing as needed, like any cat of any age can get a feline leukemia test. So I don't know that as needed is needed. Heartworm testing, there's a certain age that they have to be in order to do that. So that's the only,
So just say, take off the as needed.
Yeah.
So just
Yeah,
always
I get you.
thinking
yeah.
that. Okay.
Are you wanting to add heartworm test to this column? You're not, are you?
Do cats get heartworm?
Okay.
they can, they're an aberrant host, and so
Okay.
there's like, you don't ever see it.
Then when we move down in the language below, where it'd be the same thing, we'd be changing the 7 to 3 there. The rest of that would stay the same, and then we would be getting rid of, again, the total last paragraph, correct?
Yep.
All right. Any other discussion on any of that? And then we go into the feline adoption procedures. Have the entire family is encouraged to attend, appointment down inquiry, walk-ins are taken as time allowed. 30, 60 minutes, and then we're back into the adoption process on anything to add in that column.
The same thing as the deposit
Yeah. it's been-
Okay.
at the end.
When we're moving in, we got a little bit of work to do on the general guidelines before we'd have it completed. We've got adopted animals over 3 months of age will have rabies vaccination before leaving the shelter. If they're under 3 months, they're not required by state law to have that, correct?
Yeah, they have to be over 12 weeks.
Right. And it's very interesting on the state law section. I think we're best to stick with the 3. They require over 3 months to have it, but it does not become a violation of the law until they're over 6 months of age. And then, so there's kind of a window in there such that there's not any consequences for it. The adopter's over 18 years of age. We have the right to refuse adoption if it's not in the best interest of the animal. Should be if the adoption contract is voided and the shelter, I think this is one not really wording, it was more of a question as to how we should handle it.
Yeah.
How, let's see, the adoption contract is voided and the shelter has the authority through animal control officer to arrange for the removal of the animal to the adopter's home if the spay-neuter is not carried out. What would be our policy on refund at that point?
There would be no refund.
There would be no refund, all right, everyone's comfortable with leaving
Yeah.
any changes in any of that?
Mhm.
I think that looks good.
And we need to be sure that that language gets put into the adoption agreement where necessary. An animal that is not a good fit in the adopter's home may remain in the shelter within 7 days for a full refund.
And then I think you need to add the sentence that the animal shelter is not responsible for any damages
Right, yes,
Yep.
in the home or to other pets,
yes.
or, you know.
Should
Well,
we,
that's gonna be more of something to get into the adoption agreement than it being here in a policy on what they're doing in the shelter. Or do you want it both? I don't care.
It should be included where it says we have the right to refuse any adoptions.
And the animal
That is not in
shelters.
the best interest of the animal, and I think it should go along after.
But where it's gonna carry the importance is to have it in the adoption
We should
agreement.
probably
Can we do both?
In both, that's
Yeah.
fine, we can include that in both.
And then on this, an animal that is not a good fit and the adopter shall may be returned to the shelter within 7 days for a full refund. Do we also wanna include language that encourages them that if they've like gotten past those 7 days, that they can still bring that animal back, because we'd rather it not be dumped?
Right.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking, like, maybe they don't get a full refund, but at any time that the animal is, you know, not
Just say,
working
yeah,
out.
Well,
it's
you're-
returned
all
after-
that already
after 1
exists
week.
as such.
yeah.
I mean, that comes in more under owner surrender or so forth.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I don't really think you
Yeah,
get
it would-
into,
it would
that's-
turn
that
into
would be
an owner
different
surrender.
there.
Okay.
I really don't think you need that on this part of the policy.
Another thing that goes along with if the animal is not a good fit and returned within the 7 days, one thing that we have been doing is we have been giving them an option, either a refund, or you can choose to put that towards the future of the animal. Say if we find another potential good home for that animal, that could be a sponsorship for that animal's next adoption, instead of giving you your money back.
Yeah.
And I don't think that needs to be like a policy, but that can just be something
It's an
your
option,
staff can,
right.
your staff can encourage people to do.
The other question I have about that is like 7 days, you know, some animals don't really come out of their shell.
Right, it takes 3 months to decompress on a
And so like 3 months I feel like is way too long
Yeah.
Yeah.
to say that they can come back for a full refund, but I don't know if 7 days is long enough.
I think 2 weeks, I think 2 weeks is a good time
Like,
frame for that.
if they start to, like, you know,
Time.
after a week, they start to maybe come around a little bit. So I would say 14
And
days.
animals returned after that are considered just owner.
Yes.
Yes.
I think that that should be in there too as well.
Exactly what you said,
Animals.
yeah.
You can please say C, policy,
That's
C, that policy.
And then I'd had a note that I wasn't sure on how the wording should be, but we should have a statement here at the end of the policy. The shelter director has the authority to make minor deviations from this policy when they deem it's in the best interest of all to do so. I'm open to any other wording on it, and I wasn't sure how to define minor as such, but I do know, for example, if you have a situation that it's gonna be 4 days instead of 3,
Right.
that there needs to be a little bit of deviation there,
Right.
to give some room.
Holiday week or, you know,
Yeah,
all kinds of stuff.
right.
Yeah.
It's difficult to write a policy, it'd be so many pages to fit every situation that we need to allow the judgment of the shelter director.
Yeah,
But I
there-
do think we need to document why there was something done
Right.
differently.
There is a lot of gray area and everybody's circumstances are different, so there is certain situations that
Do you have
require.
any
just a
ideas on how to word that, Sue?
I'm thinking about it.
All right.
How about on a case-by-case basis?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds good.
Deviations from this policy on a case-by-case basis, yeah,
Some
I think
like
that's
you
something.
say may be very minor and some might be, I gotta think about this a little bit, so.
Yeah. So the shelter director has the authority,
Discretion.
the discretion, to make deviations from this policy on a case-by-case basis. Does that work?
And get the language in, it needs to be written documentation.
Yeah.
With, and document, with
Yeah.
documentation, with appropriate documentation.
Any other general guidelines that need to be added? I think that's pretty well finished for the adoption policy.
Let's say it's not set in stone yet, so if something pops in your head, you can always revisit it at some point.
So you want me to type this up here?
That'd be great.
That'd be
I
great.
wasn't-
That'd
I
be
didn't quite
great.
have enough to ask, but I'm glad you
I'd
brought
rather
it
not
here.
have to do it every time.
I've got to warn you. You say.
Alright, perfect, and then hopefully at the next, okay, so can we, if we have another work session, can we approve this at a work session, or does it have to be approved in a official meeting, like a regular meeting?
We can approve it when it comes back
Like
at the
when-
work
okay.
session. There's not gonna be a rush. I mean, everything's running pretty smooth at the shelter now.
Yeah.
and,
I just figured we get everything done and approve it all at once,
And then the county commissioners have to approve
and
it?
the county commissioners can have it.
I abstain.
Okay.
Oh,
Let's make it Grand sweep for them all.
Yeah.
There you go.
Don't even give them a steal.
So, 2 weeks from tonight, work session?
That works better. I have a meeting a week from tonight, so 2 weeks from tonight would work better.
Yeah, that's it there.
20th?
I'm good until we get into the month of June, and then Lewis has me busy. So it'll be hard.
So we want to wait till the next work session before we delve into the.
Yeah.
Make sure, do you wanna start on it?
Yeah, it's,
21st,
it's
right?
already 6:30. This,
Okay.
21st.
yeah.
20th.
Yeah, 20th.
20.
So the next meeting's April 20th at 5:30.
March 7th.
And that's for a work session.
Next Thursday's 14th, next Thursday
It's gonna be a
It's
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Wednesday. My bad. Huh. It's been a rough day, okay.
That's why I use the cheater.
Too many meetings. Hard to keep track.
I think spreading them 2 weeks is, if we give this 2 weeks, every 2 weeks, get the same. I do want to say before we adjourn, so I was looking at the numbers on medical care, and we have not spent as much as I would have assumed that we would have spent. So far, we've spent $1,975.85. I know you said those numbers have
Wait
changed.
till you get to the next one.
Yeah, and then there was, it's kind of weird because there's the vet services and there was nothing budgeted for spay and neuter certificates or rabies vaccinations. But there's 20,000 that was budgeted for vet services and only 282 has come out of that. So Ray did say that can be moved around. And then the medications, we had budgeted 12,000 for that and we spent $953.39 on that. So there's 93% of that budget left. So that is kind of helpful and good to know that until I guess I see these next numbers.
Yeah, what's gonna get real expensive throughout the year if we're going towards like a no-kill shelter is the vet services, line item on there. Because anything other than a spay, neuter, or rabies vaccination gets super expensive. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. It's gonna go down drastically because we have some ailments in there. And, they can be fixed for the dog to be fully adoptable. So that's the line right there that's really gonna show you what it's gonna cost to be a no-kill.
The definition of no-kill is 90%
Right.
adoption or
Right.
placement rate. So I
Right.
feel like even in the past years, we've been getting to that point. I don't remember exactly with cats, but I feel
What
like
did you put
with
down
dogs
since
for
you've
sure.
been there? 2?
3 cats, 2 feline leukemia positive, 1 with a broken back.
And I feel like those are, those are definitely medical reasons, and I think that too goes along with the no-kill policy, is that, no-kill is, you're not euthanizing adoptable animals.
Right.
Like those cats that you did were euthanized for humane reasons, for medical reasons, and so that still fits in with that no-kill, so like, really your euthanasia rate has been 0 when it comes to adoptable animals.
Yeah, which, I mean, that's what I have too, is no-kill philosophy, so it's a philosophy that you adopt. You can't, no shelter's ever going to be 100% no-kill unless you're being horrible. I mean, some of the dogs do, and cats have no other option, but the nationally recognized standard for achieving no-kill status is a 90% save rate. However, the true no-kill status is saving 100% of in the animal shelter care who are treatable or can be rehabilitated,
Right.
so medical or behavior. So right now, I would say you're at 100% because you're not euthanizing animals that can't, that can't be treated.
And it's the animals that come in with the broken legs or the skin conditions, and that stuff's just, you just have to bear with me on that, because it's not cheap. So,
I know.
but they're adoptable because they
are.
can get to the adoptable point. So I would love to take every one of those animals and get them to the point where they have a chance in life and are adoptable,
Yeah.
but it is expensive. So that is one thing everybody's gonna get to see.
I know, we don't want to rely on donations,
Right.
but you can still ask for donations. You can post that dog with a skin condition and say, hey, this dog's a great dog, has a skin condition, we'd love to see your donations to help support the medical fund in the
I'm not
community.
in favor,
Well,
I'm in favor of donations, but I am against this situation of putting it out there to the public that if we don't get donations for this dog, it might not get the care that it needs. It reminds, I don't know, it just, it's something, there's something wrong, there's something dishonest about that.
There's not.
Either you're going to treat the animal or you're not going to treat the
It's saying,
animal.
will you help care for this animal? We're
But
asking you to help care for this
I am
animal.
all in favor of asking for donations as a whole for the shelter and so forth, and to say, here's what your donations enabled us to do, and I would appreciate the oncoming and so forth, but the situation of putting a particular animal, it's needing care, like we can't give it the care unless we get money from you,
That's not what we're saying. We're saying,
no, that
hey,
is what it's saying.
this dog has a skin condition and we'd love some help with its medical care.
I
As
paid
we're
my taxes.
providing its medical
That
care.
is what it's saying.
I paid my taxes, and you're asking, yeah, that is what
Yeah.
you're saying. That's why, yeah. it's just
I
a
guess
problem.
I don't see what's wrong with asking the community for support.
I don't see
I'm
a
not
problem
saying that we
asking
need to
for
ask them to
support, but-
fund it 100%. I'm saying we ask them for support.
I'm
Well, maybe
saying,
make it clear in what you're posting that we're paying for this.
Yeah,
And it's.
And we'd love
it's-
your support.
Yeah. So
Because
that people
I
know
About the
that
wording.
they are
Yeah,
getting the
it's
care.
about the
that-
verbiage, which I think is why it's so important with staffing, that you have someone who's able to manage that social media and able to manage that verbiage. But, I mean, you look at other shelters and they do this all the time and people pour in the support and it's great. Because if that's gonna be a concern, that the vet services, it'd be great to take these donations and say your donations are gonna go directly into our vet services to help care for this dog, and if we exceed what we need to care for this dog,
Well,
we'll
we
go to
could-
help care for the next dog,
well,
or
we
the
could-
cat.
What we could do is, after we have an animal healed up, we can say, thank you for your donations, helped heal this animal.
Mhm.
It didn't have to say,
'cause it reminds me of a common tool that a lot of shelters used to use in the past. They would put the dog on and they'd say, well, it's got 3 days left.
Yeah.
Oh, I see that all the time, I
It's
saw
got
one
2
over the
days
weekend,
left.
and it made me
I find it to
sick.
be very similar to that same type of
Well, I think you should look
mechanism.
at how,
Yes.
there's a page, it's not the Indy Humane Society, it is the Indianapolis Animal Care and Control, I think that's what it is. They have like a certain page where they'll raise funds for medical care, because they, like us, are underfunded and they have a lot more animals that come in. But the way they word that is, it's not, hey, we're gonna euthanize this animal, it's, hey, this dog needs this care, or this cat needs this care, and we'd love your support. And they even have a program, which I guess would be kind of similar to what the Humane Society's doing, but you guys don't publicize it, I think it's called Any Cares or something like that, where if someone comes into the shelter to relinquish their animal just because they can't care for like the medical care, this organization steps in and then they'll provide the medical care, but they'll do fundraisers too on their Facebook page. They'll say, hey, like this happened, this family couldn't afford the care, but because of your donations, Any Care's helping them out, donate now. And people donate. I don't think it's shameful to do that in any way.
Well, I just want to be certain that if we're going to take the position and the responsibility, that we're going to treat all these animals that come in as such, that we are also willing to take the responsibility that the governmental agency that's making the first promise is going to back the promise up with the funding to carry those things out, and not be put in a position of saying, well, you're going to have to go out and get funding to do what you told the public you were going to do.
I'm not saying that. I'm
Okay.
saying there's no harm in asking the public to,
I
you know,
understand.
I'm willing to call businesses and say, hey, do you want to sponsor this dog's adoption? Do you want to sponsor this? I'm willing to do that. I asked my husband's business to sponsor some of the adoptions at the shelter. There's no shame in doing that whatsoever. There's no shame to post one of those dogs that has skin conditions and say, this is our dog and this is the personality and we're caring for it, and if you want to help support the medical care, give us a donation, call the shelter, stop by. It's nothing to be embarrassed of, it's nothing to be ashamed of, and I know the county can give more, I know the city can give more, I know that Hanover can probably give more if we have a great way of asking, if we actually monitor our budget, and they're gonna be more likely to give money if we're moving towards a no-kill philosophy.
Well, I guess
And I
I'd be more,
understand that
I'd
this
be
is
more
gonna
enthused
be,
and more open if we had, if we had a budget on paper.
yeah,
If we actually had any idea, we've set to 2-3 meetings, and we got some numbers that thrown around one way or the other, but there's still, we don't have a damn clue of where we realistically stand. Now, Ray's done work with the auditor, and I'd say she's probably puts together some,
Yeah, I have it right here.
some good
Give it to
numbers
me.
that we're probably going to need the dollars more than you read out. I'd say she's probably accurate on it, if anything, on the low side, because she hasn't taken into consideration the treatment of these other animals that can come in. I mean, you can get into $5,000–6,000 on one dog without any problem. In the past, we've paid $3,000–4,000, they paid once for cataract surgery on a 8 or 9-year-old dog. And so where are you going to draw the line on that?
Well, personally, not saying the
No,
shelter,
we're
personally,
not
I
talking
don't draw
about
the line.
personally, we're talking about for Jefferson County.
Well, I
And you're
guess,
saying that we have
do you think a dog's not adoptable because it has cataracts?
this particular situation with the cataracts, and it also had situations where it was food aggressive and so forth, and they decided that if they got the cataracts removed, it might not be food aggressive. And so we've spent $3,000 on having cataracts without any approval. Jenny did that on her own. And so is that going to be the type of thing? It's easy to get into those kind of bills.
Was the dog just food aggressive or was the dog aggressive?
I believe it remained aggressive after the cataracts
Food aggressive?
were taken out, and
Just food
aggressive in
aggressive?
general. It was a problem.
Like, did it attack people?
I
Did
don't
it attack
remember.
other
It's been
animals?
6–7 years ago. but
I
it
think
was-
there's
it
a
was
bigger
problem.
picture.
It was a Cocker Spaniel, and if anyone has some knowledge of older Cocker Spaniels, tend to get a little bit of disagreeable with anyone from the outside.
Well, I mean, I feel bad if you have any older animals, I feel bad for them.
Well, that's a
Because-
horrible thing to say. That's
Because
just rude.
I'm sorry, but you just seem to be so set on that we can't move forward on adopting what we're seeing nationwide. Nationwide numbers have dropped immensely on euthanasia, and I'm not saying you have a dog who's been hit by a car and is in extreme pain, that we drop $20,000 to save that dog. I'm saying Lindsay needs to be able to, make that call and have the authority to do so. But she also, if she has a dog that comes in with a skin condition or a broken leg or a cat, she should be able to say, I'm gonna work to save this animal because it deserves a chance at a good life. And we shouldn't just euthanize just because it's gonna cost a vet service fee.
Right. Well, having a policy that Lindsay can make a decision to work to save animals in certain circumstances is much different than making a policy that says, we are going to save every animal that can be saved.
Please tell me where I put that.
If you read through the policy, it reads very close to that.
If you read through my
Yes,
policy,
it does.
I gave definitions as to what a no-kill philosophy is, and it's what Joy just said, it's a 90% save rate.
I understand.
It does not in anywhere say that any animal should be saved if it's suffering, so.
No, I understand it doesn't
It's
say
not-
it
it
was suffering,
states that
but
it's not
regardless of-
100%.
right.
So what's the definition of treatable?
So that's where we would have to get
That's
into
what
a
you're gonna have
further
to do.
discussion,
Yeah.
which is what I stated, is
That
we'll
would
have
be
to get,
It'd be determined by a licensed medical professional,
yeah,
and whether or not it would be treatable.
or not
And
treatable.
what is necessary care too.
Right.
Yeah.
Cataract surgery
Right.
is not necessary care.
Mhm.
Treating
Right.
is different from adopting.
Really, that should be your
Yeah.
call.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
to
yeah,
a point,
the-
and then it would be like,
Where-
Baron, I
If you
think
got,
this
you have
can
my
be
most updated
taken
one.
care of,
Right.
and
Oh,
you
yeah,
look
this
at
was
it,
the-
x-ray
this
it,
is the
and
one you just said.
it's no way gonna happen.
Sorry.
Right.
To me,
mhm.
she's got enough knowledge, she knows when, yeah, I think it's savable, I better have
Well,
a
and that's the
official
other thing
opinion.
too, is like no kill, it's a 90% placement rate, right? And so there are gonna be those animals that come in with catastrophic injuries that, yeah, they could be saved for $20,000.
Right.
And that's when you make that decision, like, we can't spend $20,000 saving this one animal.
Yeah.
And so that is in that 10% of animals that could have potentially been saved, but they're not because of the cost involved in that. And so that's where there's that leeway in that 10%, kind of guideline that you have sitting there.
Well, there's so many variables come in there, though, the age of the dog, the quality of life that you're
Yeah.
gonna spend, does
Yeah.
it justify the means?
Yeah. And that's why it's not,
Like
that's why no kill is not 100%. That's
And
why
it
it's
will never be.
90%.
A
Yeah.
shelter will never have 100% save rate. And in my language, it says ultimately that the shelter relies on the discretion of the shelter director to
Right.
make the decision based on the adoptability of the animal, which adoptability in my email, not in my policy, stated that that would have to be something that we would need to discuss in probably looking at our intake, rating the adoptability of a dog. And that this is something we will evaluate at our intake, and that the Animal Shelter Advisory Board and County Commissioners have vested this authority in the shelter, the director, and that you can consult a veterinarian or even the board when it comes to those euthanasia decisions. You're not required to, but ultimately this is at your discretion, which is a difficult decision to
Right.
be in, but.
And there are some
um,
circumstances, like we had those couple of old dogs come in, and I was just happened to be
You were
lucky
fabulous
enough
with them.
to find people that took them in as is and just gave them, like, I don't
Hospice care.
charge an adoption fee for something like that. I think they had Cole for 2 months and he peacefully passed away.
Aw.
And it's just situations like that, that if there's somebody out there willing to take those types of animals in
Mhm.
and take them on themselves, I'm not going to euthanize those animals at the shelter. I'm
Be
going to
kind of
give
like
them
a hospice care.
Yeah,
is,
yeah,
yes.
and there's people willing
Yes.
to provide that hospice care, so that's why
Yes.
it's important that Lindsay makes these decisions, but it's important to note that we can be a no-kill shelter and adopt the no-kill philosophy, and we need to have on not just the page where you can see adoptable animals, but we need to have a definition of that for the public to see as well. We need to have like an actual, on this county website, like a page for the animal shelter that explains, you know, this is our shelter director and sort of stuff like that, and click here to see the adoptable animals, but it could have this. So really, I would say that we as a board need to decide, do we wanna move forward with adopting a no-kill philosophy definition, or do we wanna continue on this path? If this animal shows any sort of aggression, we're gonna euthanize it. If an animal is old, we're gonna euthanize it. So that's something to think about as we're moving into these discussions.
Well, we haven't been on a path that if a dog shows any sign of aggression, we're gonna euthanize, or a path that any old dog, we're gonna euthanize. The policy that I put before the board did not have any language in it. There was not one single spot in it that said, we shall euthanize a dog or a cat in certain circumstances. It was written in such a way to give the shelter director the leeway to operate where they needed to operate. And there's just a lot of areas that are difficult. If you want to push down this hospice route, it's very difficult for me to understand as such. An animal isn't like a human. They can't tell you when they're hurting. So if I'm going to put an animal into hospice, I damn near would want a vet to evaluate it damn near on a weekly or daily basis to tell me what the condition of it is. You know, versus we're gonna let it there and be proud that we waited 2 months for it to die on its own. And you don't know if it suffered, didn't suffer, or,
We did have vet consults
yeah,
on those dogs.
yeah, I mean, that's tough.
So, yeah, I was just lucky enough to come across people that were experienced and stuff like that that took
And
them
I
on.
get concerned on the no-kill shelter label as to, it gives the impression to the public that I'm not sure that we want there, that instead of taking responsibility for their own animal to get it adopted out and do things, I get a pass. I can take this animal to the shelter and drop it off, and my conscience is clear now. So you're going to see the number of animals dropped off by the public go up versus them taking the steps to find homes on their own as well. It's a tough process.
Like public education.
And someone's got to draw the line on, you know, is it going to be 20,000 didn't work? What does 10,000 work? Does 5,000 work?
I mean, that's
After
what,
Lindsay's.
yeah, that's what her role is to
That's what the
decide where it
commissioner's role
is.
is.
You know,
And
I mean,
until,
well, the funds are
and
there,
until
right?
you
She has to
know
decide
that there's going to be funding available for these things, and as much has to be worked out on all of that, doing all these things sound wonderful to me as well, but they remind me of somebody that's concentrating on remodeling their kitchen and bragging on what a good job they're doing at the same time the damn house is on fire. Let's get the house fire put out before we worry about the damn kitchen. So, you know.
I just think that with the way that this shelter has been for the past few years, like, it's been sitting at a greater than 90% placement rate. And so we're running a no-kill shelter right now. It's just a matter of adopting the wording for it.
Right.
You know, we've been we've been having a no-kill shelter there for years. It's just the wording is not there. We just don't claim to be a no-kill shelter, but we're fitting in the description of it.
And I
We're
think
fitting
we-
in the definition
Yeah,
of
and
it.
I think we need to have the verbiage there and the policies there, because we won't always have a Lindsay. Like, she may get sick of us and leave us. Or she may stick with us until she retires, and then You know, you gotta have this policy in place, and it doesn't seem that we have policies in place. And some of the horror stories that I've heard from you, and I've heard from Bobby, and I've even heard from Tammy about where the shelter was years ago and the way some of the decisions were with the euthanasia of animals. It's important that we have these discussions.
Something I think you don't know or that the board doesn't know is that data on euthanizing cats in the last year and a half that Jenny was there was inaccurate.
I would imagine.
So overcrowding and euthanizing kittens and euthanizing cats was taking place. The shelter was indeed a kill shelter.
Well, and that's what I was saying with cats, I didn't think that it was, earlier in the conversation, I said with cats, it probably
It was, and I think that
qualify
that's
as
really
no-go.
hard, it puts you guys in a really hard situation. But also some of the points that you're making, Hannah, about this group or that group, a lot of times the non-for-profits can do those, they can ask for the money and all that. It's very different when it's a taxpayer-funded shelter, and so the wording is not even gonna be easy. Because like Alley Cats, Shane was showing me, oh, Alley Cats, you know, post a picture of the kitty and can we donate? You know, that's great because Alley Cats runs on donations. They're not a taxpayer funded.
Well,
You guys can set a lot of standards, but ultimately it puts the commissioners in a position where they're gonna have to make some decisions. You can make a recommendation on what you want, but ultimately it's gonna be your local government that makes a decision about how the money is spent. And taxpayers who aren't willing to fund even $500 to save their dog and request to have their animal euthanized may not be willing to allow commissioners to spend $2,000 or $3,000 and then that animal leave the county for rescue, or, I mean, it really puts some people in a difficult position. So you can make recommendations, but committing the shelter board to a policy without the commissioners'
I
approval.
understand that it's a recommendation that we'll make to the commissioners and that the
Yeah.
commissioners have to adopt it, but I still stand that I think it's fine for us, even though we're taxpayer funded, to ask that the community give us support. I help run the events, I hired Ashlyn to help with that, but the city collects taxpayer dollars and we raise funds to cover our fireworks show, to cover our parades. You've
Do
sponsored
you
an
raise
event in
money
the past.
did you raise money to fund your police department or government services?
We don't, but
Okay.
there's no shame in asking for money. There's
No one's telling you
absolutely-
that there's a shame in that, but you choose not to raise money or do funding events for essential government services. There would be some shame involved if the city said, well, we just didn't budget correctly, so we can't fund city police department. Oh,
would
well, we
agree
didn't
with
fund
that.
correctly, we can't pave that sidewalk.
I would
Oh,
agree with
sorry,
that,
we
but
can't
I
pay
don't know
Hannah's
why
salary.
I don't know why you guys are thinking it's such a problem to ask the community to help support the medical
I
fund of these
think,
animals.
from my point of view, in the Humane Society, what part I run, is that the issue is how are those dollars going to be spent? And in the past, you carry that baggage. You carry that very negative thing of,
Oh,
the
yeah.
money was raised, but it was spent
It
to
was
pay
not
the
spent.
gas bill or salaries, things that the public did not think they were funding. They
So-
thought they were funding low-cost spay-neuter, or leashes, or collars, or nice beds, or toys.
Mm-hmm.
They had no idea they were paying for an electric bill.
Which is why it's important in these posts that we say that this money will go into the shelter medical fund and it will help support these animals and it will
We-
help support our medical fund.
We have those new funds set up where I have split them up, like medical, spay, neuter, rabies, shelter supply. So when we get donations that come in, I split them up into those specific ones. And I try to let people know as they donate and they come in, like, I'm gonna put this towards this.
It's
Yeah.
really
And put that on the
important that in
receipt that
public
they get.
meetings and privately, we're not saying, well, if we need to take some of those donation monies to pay into the general fund, because that was mentioned at the last board meeting. And that's not a positive thing when you're, no matter how, if Hannah's doing some really great PR work and some press work on social media saying this is what it's for, and you've got those line items, but then
Right.
the pressure comes on and it's like, well, we can direct some of those dollars back into the general fund. That's where
Oh, we don't,
that's where it gets really hard for the public.
I don't remember that being mentioned at the last board meeting.
I'm-
But
I'm-
I think I asked Ray about just switching some of these, but this was all medical care I was asking him for, cause we had budgeted 20,000 into vet services and nothing into spay and neuter. So vet services is just general things. We should be able to carry some of that money over to spay and neuter because that's also a vet service. That's still medical.
And we have the medications category
Yes,
too.
medications category.
I guess for my concern, if we're going to move to a situation where we're mandating that any animal that comes in with, nobody's decided on a dollar limit yet, but if it can be saved with a certain number of dollars and be made
We're not
adoptable.
mandating. We're saying it's Lindsay's discretion.
That's not what's been talked about as far as what's wrote up. There's not any difference in that than the other side.
Did you read it?
Well,
Because it says it
what
is
have we-
difficult
what-
to be-
What have the rest of you heard? We've heard 700, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 for an animal.
It is difficult to be definitive when adopting criteria for euthanasia. Ultimately, the shelter relies on the discretion of the shelter director to make the decision based on the adoptability of the animal as determined in the shelter's evaluation intake policies.
I mean, how do
We've
you
vested this
handle in
authority
your
in
office?
Lindsay.
I'm a client of yours, and I bring my dog in that's been hit by a car, and you tell me it's gonna be $1,500 for the surgery, and I tell you, I don't wanna spend that amount of money, I want the animal euthanized. You refuse to euthanize it?
No.
No. You know, do you tell that customer, well, you should be willing to pay $1,500 for it because that animal can be saved for that amount of money?
That's not what we're saying, Warren.
So
It
this
is what you're saying.
I don't know what you are missing. I really
Am
don't.
I missing something?
You are, because you're I
Bobby,
feel
am I
you're
missing
choosing
something
to
on that aspect of
to
it?
miss
I've
it.
never heard anybody mandate anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what it is that the nationally recognized standard for achieving no kill is a 90% save rate. There's truly no kill status
Mhm.
of saving 100% of the animals because of some animals can't be treated and some can't be rehabilitated. And no kill does not mean that animals with untreatable or unmanageable conditions should be allowed to suffer.
Yeah.
A dog that's been hit by a car like that, that's suffering. You're going to want to say, we need to euthanize it, and Lindsay needs to have the authority to, on the spot, say, oh, we gotta get this animal euthanized, like the cat with the broken back. So, the cat with the broken back that was euthanized still gives us this no-kill philosophy, because that cat was not going to reach adoptability.
Right, yeah. And the same thing too, when you look at, like, in the policy, it's at the discretion of the shelter director, like, what animal is adoptable too. Like, if you bring in a 14-year-old dog that's, you know, blind and has other medical conditions and has this certain medical condition that would require, you know, $500 to treat, you know, the
It's not gonna be
adoptability of
considered
that.
adoptable.
Right, the adoptability of that animal is a lot different than a 6-month-old puppy that has a medical condition that's gonna require that $500 to treat.
Well, you know, you were asking
And
about.
that's why it's at the discretion of the shelter director.
Right. At the top of the policy, you wrote out in precise, the shelter only considers euthanasia as an absolute last resort where no other avenue is
I
open to
didn't write that.
prevent. That's the one you sent to me.
That is inaccurate, Warren. This is the last one, and you have it. I did not write that. That was Lindsay's original document that you said, hey, we need to look and address this language. This is my document right here. And it starts
me
with
see
the
which
Jefferson
one's your
County
last.
Animal Shelter, that was never my language. It starts with talking about the no-kill philosophy, and we strive to only euthanize animals who are irremovably suffering and not able to be rehabilitated or dangerous to the public.
It was just
She sent it last week.
An
email.
I even called you about it, actually,
I
Warren.
don't know, I think I have it here. I've got the old one mixed in with it. That may be part of the problem.
That wasn't mine, that was the first one, and you said, hey, this needs to be a bigger discussion. That was sent by Lindsay.
I take it into discussion, age, and the ailments.
I will look at that one in more detail.
Right.
Please do, I told you about it.
When I-
It even says a portion
I'm
that
thinking,
says,
like, I'm thinking,
should we add in Warren's language
it's
to
a
be-
little bit of an expensive
so that
place,
it's,
but
do we
they're
leave it
quality
vague, or
life,
do we need
so
to add in Warren's language
everything's different.
of
Well,
the
that's the one
may
I've
be
done. That's where I
euthanized?
was reading from. It says right there on the bottom of it.
And that's what a lot of people don't understand.
What's it say at
As
the
an
top of
absolute last
it?
resort, I did not, I thought that was,
What does it say up at the top?
no other avenue is to prevent danger of public, other animals, or pain and suffering of the animal. Yeah, you started in the middle, Warren. We strive to only euthanize euthanize animals who are irreversibly
The
suffering.
shelter only considers euthanasia as an absolute last resort where no other avenue is open to prevent danger to the public or animal. That is your language.
Okay, I apologize, but other pain or suffering of
You
the
understand
animal.
my concerns.
We can take that language out, that's fine. We can leave the part that we say we strive to only euthanize animals who are suffering and not able to be
So I do
able to
have
take
the
or
right
dangerous.
policy.
Okay, but it also says, do we need to add Warren's language of the may be euthanized so that in the case we do have to euthanize, the public doesn't go crazy? Or is the above language vague enough?
I
Because
think
we don't
it-
want the public to be like,
All
oh
right,
my god.
okay, so here's what I'm gonna do.
Let's just do this
Here's
in
what I'm
2
gonna do
weeks.
from now on, like, I'm going to have the dog checked out by a vet when it comes in, dog or cat, because there's gonna be some things that I can't see from the naked eye, because I'm not educated enough. So I usually, 9 times out of 10, when I bring an animal down, I usually ask, what is this animal's quality of life going to be? They give me an honest answer, I go from there. So that's what I'm planning on doing. I have just gotten lucky since I've been here that there are special people out there to take in special cases where I haven't had to euthanize the animal for its age or its disability or anything. They've just been skilled enough to take on those animals. But just
Well,
stop yelling at each other.
I also think, Lindsay, that you're not just lucky, you've you worked hard to find
Well, it's
people.
all about the kind of connections that you
Yeah.
can get. Like, some of these rescue groups swoop in and take 8, 9, 10 dogs at a time, like this one that's coming in. Establishing a relationship with those kinds of places are important because they're coming in and they're taking our entire maternity ward.
Which is fabulous.
It's fabulous. So it's all about the relationships you make with people.
But give yourself credit.
Yeah,
Because you were doing the
well,
work.
you gotta give that credit to Switzerland County, because Kelly's the one
Okay.
that did that for me, because we worked with them through Switzerland County. So she's the one that put the word in to add our shelter on, but are some of the things that you have to do to get those animals inconvenient and hectic? Yes, like last minute bedding and stuff. It's hectic, but think about it, 17 dogs on one transport.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Every one of them have homes right now.
Wow,
Every one of them that went on this last transport are in homes, so it's worth it.
it is.
And
But you do the work. I mean, you really do, and I know you're stressed and you're
I'm
scrambling,
stressed
but
out.
you do the work to get our shelter to this point. When you came in, there was 80-something cats. How many cats are there today, other than the babies?
I
What'd
do
you
have
say?
one question on the adoption
Barely
policies that
anything.
were there
17
before me.
cats.
Was that just a temporary policy on
Kittens, is that what
cats,
she
where they
said?
kept them until
I
6
didn't
months,
catch
or was that just something that was happening
just
right before I
something
got
that
there?
Jenny did on her own. There was no
Okay.
policy established on that at all.
Okay, so that's been going on for a while then.
I don't know how long it's going
Okay.
on. This advisory board wasn't made aware that it was going on,
Yeah.
particularly.
I didn't know if that was just like, the girl that was before me that was there temporarily, I didn't know if that was hers or Jenny's.
No, that was Jenny's from what I
Okay,
can
so
gather.
that's a reason for overcrowding right there. Change that up and you don't have overcrowding anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, then. 2 weeks.
Julie.
Motion
I'll
to
make a
adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Yes.
Hey, and if you want.